Welcome to the How Does She Do It podcast. I'm joined today by Heather Barber. Heather, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And for our listeners who haven't had the pleasure to get to know you just yet, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Okay, so I'm in Salt Lake City and I'm literally the queen of wraps. Like if you drive down I-15, I am just an institution right there on I-15 in downtown Salt Lake. And I started the company when I was 23. I'm now 42. I have 5 companies and I know a million ways not to do things.
I bet you do. My goodness. So, for anyone who's listening and thinking, Queen of Raps, is she a musician? Is this hair rap? Right? Is she going
Yeah.
to break it down?
Yeah.
Explain to us, for the listener, what does that mean?
Okay, so wraps, like vehicle wraps, like if you see a bus or a plumber's truck, or it's just like a huge giant sticker that goes on a vehicle. And that's a front end business. But I own 4 more that support that up.
Yeah, that's incredible. So, if we're gonna roll it into a nice package, you're also the queen of marketing. And not online marketing, but like real life, in person, experience based marketing.
Ding, 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 ding. Yep, you got it.
Okay, I love it. So, tell us a little bit about the 23-year-old you. Where was she in life, and what was she thinking when she chose Queen of Raps?
Oh my. So I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. Like I was literally the only 8-year old with a job. And so I and my dad was the kind of guy, we grew up on the country club, Willow Creek Country Club. And my dad was the kind of guy that was like, he said, Dad, can I borrow $1? And he'd say, when are you going to pay me back? Okay. So I was under the impression we were living like hand to mouth, type thing. And so gotta go to work, gotta go to work. So I've always been very, very goal oriented. And so I started college at the University of Utah when I was 15, and I graduated from the University of Utah when I was 18, started my master's when I was 19. And of course, I knew everything at that point, freaking genius. And so
But kind of,
I,
but also kind of. So you graduated early, you got a master's degree early.
yeah, but like book smart's completely different from like
Mm.
real world. The other thing is like ignorance is bliss. So we started, I didn't know anyone, because I'm 22, 23 years old. So my brothers and I started the business together, and it's literally the craziest story you've ever heard. So one of the family businesses we had was an inflatable company. I'm talking about like giant gorillas on car lots.
Did you do the woo these things?
Oh yeah, you got it. You got it.
What
Yep.
are these called?
Oh
Wave
my gosh. Wacky wavy dudes.
wacky
Yeah.
wavy dudes. Yeah. Okay.
Classy. Classy. So it started with that. My younger brother was running that business. So he was 21 and he was running it with him and a guy that didn't speak English. And my brother's just an absolute genius. I mean, unbelievable. So in the first year, he took that business from 100,000 to 1 million.
Wow.
And yeah, he's literally incredible. So that business was up and going, and we're mainly car dealers were our customers. And in Utah, there are 2 main car dealers, Ken Garff and Larry Miller. So it wasn't exactly, we were hitting up 24 different brands. We were hitting up 2 main brands that had 24 different locations.
Mm.
So it's a pretty easy sell. So once you're in with these guys, they don't want to be making any other calls. So they would ask my brother, hey, can this gorilla hold up a banner that says 0% financing? Keep in mind, like the businesses run out of a storage shed with all these giant inflatables. And my brother says, yes,
Of
we can do
course.
that.
Of course he
Because
says
why not?
yes, right?
Why not? So he enlists the help of my older brother, Nate, and he's a real technophile. And he figured out, okay, we need to get this printer, we need to do this, we need to do that. And so he was working in the family business with Matt. And then the car dealers asked, "Hey, can you do vehicle wraps?" And of course, Matt again said yes. Never heard of a vehicle wrap, never had seen a vehicle wrap, had no idea how you get a
Right?
vehicle
Just
wrap.
like me. Had to Google, I had to look up your website. What is this queen of wraps?
What
Oh,
is
okay.
going on? Oh yeah, okay. So this, keep in mind, this is like 2006. So this is like
Right.
revolutionary technology here. And so my younger brother said, "Hey, I think we have something here. There's a huge hole in the market in the bigger cities, New York, LA. There's a lot of this advertising, but in Salt Lake, there's a complete void." And so being young and dumb and stupid and 23, so my older brother's 24, I'm 23, and my younger brother's 21. And we're like, go for it.
I love that.
Why not? We have nothing tying us down. We have nothing, literally nothing. So, excuse me. Let me go get a drink really quick. Sorry, it's so dry when it snows here. It takes all of the moisture out of the air.
Yeah, absolutely. Take that's all right. Good. I love a mug, a good mug.
Okay. All right, there we go. Okay, so older brother 24, me 23, younger brother's 21. Ignorance is bliss. We just said, let's go for it. So no bank would touch us, literally no one, because why would you give, 20 somethings startup money? So we went to the Bank of Dad and we said, "Hey, here's our
The bank of
idea."
dad.
Yeah, Bank of Dad. And keep in mind that this was like when interest rates were like 5%. He decided we should pay 8%, which is a subject of contention because the loan was for 15 years and we paid 8% for 15 years on
You
that money.
you actually went to the bank of dad. This
Yeah,
was not like, "Dad, give me some money, see you later." No, you paid
no.
3% above what the interest rate was, and you had a 15-year term on the loan.
Yeah, and keep in mind that 2006, the loans were 5%. They went down to 2%. I was paying 6% above market, and he would not let us refinance because we had made a deal at 8%, and he was reinvesting that money. He's like, "I got to get my return. You guys are a total crapshoot. I got to get my return." That's my dad. Don't you worry. That's my dad. Like, not gonna happen. So
And
yeah, 15 years.
but I have to say, he's doing something right. For the 3 of you to be crushing it in that way,
I
you can't really
guess.
fault the guy.
I mean, we learned something, but man alive, that check was hard to write every month. And we're like, we would beg him, "Dad, can we please refinance?" He's like, "Nope, you made a commitment. Nope, you made a commitment." Okay, whatever. But anyway, so yeah, we went to the Bank of Dad and he gave us our first loan, a whopping, 50 grand. And we literally paid it for 15 years. And now I have 5 companies and I've stepped back from the day-to-day business. So when I was 30, I had my first daughter and it was difficult to say the least. And so I wasn't planning on being a stay-at-home mom. I just kind of fell into the role. And now I've been a stay-at-home mom for 12 years and my youngest just went to kindergarten. And so I'm ready to get back in it.
Yeah. You said so much. I need to know what happened with what happened with Queen of Wraps? You guys got
So
this
it's
offer
still
to do
there.
the wraps, but, like, how did that go? You guys got the loan from dad, you figured out the tech, and you had your first client with one of these car companies, and then, like, tell me in the short version what happened over the last
20 years.
20 years.
Okay, so a couple of big things happened. Number one, the recession. And again, we were too dumb and stupid and ignorance is bliss. So we started the company in 2006, relatively little competition. As soon as people, saw a new product in the market, we started getting competitors. Meanwhile, you know, Utah has a very, very, very strong economy. So we didn't really feel it until 2009, 2010. So our business was humming along. And we also had a diversified business where we had the giant inflatables. We had banner printing, that type of thing, large format printing, and then the wrap. So we had three product lines, I guess is what you would say at that point, three streams of income coming in there. And when the recession really hit in Utah, none of the other companies had diversified. They were focusing solely on vehicle wraps, which there is a razor thin margin in vehicle wraps.
Mm.
And so they all went out of business. So we were able to survive that literally just by holding on and having other products. And not only did we hold on during the recession, like I think 2009 is when we got the 17,000 square foot building on I-15. Like,
Wow.
yeah. So we went from a storage shed,
Hmm.
like, I'm talking like to get into the building, you had to lift up a garage door to go
Right.
into the building. And then to this building on I-15, and we knew we needed advertising. When the recession happens, the pie gets smaller, and smart companies need a bigger piece of that pie. And we didn't understand what we were doing at the time because, again, we were too young, no real world experience, but we were able to expand our reach and get a bigger piece of that pie. Whereas our competitors were just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and eventually going away. We were able to expand our market through this recession. And then only years later, when I was actually like a business professor, did I realize what we had done in getting a bigger piece of a smaller pie. So yeah, that's basically it. The other thing that really helped us is we Larry H. Miller, which is a Utah-based huge company, it's national. They have an extremely harmonious relationship with Toyota nationwide. And they were able to hook us up with Saatchi and Saatchi, who is their ad agency at Toyota Nationwide's ad agency. And so we, on a whim, presented a deal to them and said, we will make all of the printing, like the commercial printing in every Toyota dealership in the Northeast, the Southeast, Texas, Intermountain West markets. And it was like throwing spaghetti against the wall. We didn't think we were going to get the deal, and we did. And so that's been humming along for, I don't know, 10, 12 years, something like that, of these huge orders from Toyota
Wow.
nationwide to the
And
point where we
that's
had to form another company.
wow. And this all was running while you stepped away to focus on your family.
Yeah. So important lessons that I learned there. Literally, my face is on the side of the building, like Queen of Wraps. Like, I'm going to send you a picture to insert right here because my face is on the side of the building. And up until that point, I just thought, you have a baby and you just move on with your life. You just keep doing what you're
Ooh.
doing.
First time mom things. Tell me about it. I
Like,
completely get it.
why not? Right? Like I can work on this is how old I am. Just do my BlackBerry and I'll be fine. This will be great. And my older daughter came out. She was early and she never breastfed, never took a bottle. She ended up in the hospital pretty much the entire first year of her life.
Hmm.
And she had a surgically implanted feeding tube for 4 years.
Oh
So
my.
life was a little rough. So
Wow.
I became a stay-at-home mom very quickly.
Yeah, that is unimaginable. That's unimaginable. Uh, and I'm curious from a personal perspective to go from crushing it as an entrepreneur to being a full-time mom, assuming like we all do.
Excuse me.
You can, if you need to cough, you can either just mute the mic or give me a finger and I'll pause.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So going from crushing it as an entrepreneur and having that same mentality as a first time mom, which all high achieving first time moms were like, we're going to crush this birth. We're going to crush breastfeeding. We're going to we're just going to crush this. And of course, it never goes the way that we want it to, but we end up learning things we would not have learned otherwise. What did you learn in this time?
Oh my goodness. Way too many things, and too many things I didn't want to learn. I'd like to bring that up. Like these are just lessons that, oh my goodness. So here's one example. I just figured kids ate. Like they just like babies eat, right? And I'm like, what the heck's wrong with this kid? Not eating. I'm taking her to therapy. We're in the hospital. We're doing all these things. And I felt like I was swimming upstream. Like I was one of those salmon that was, trying to get over a waterfall or whatever. I thought I was going to muscle my way through these problems that, oh, give me a couple weeks. This kid will be on the schedule. We're going to do baby wise. We're going to do baby signing time. We're going to do blah, 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 blah. And that's not what happened. That is not what happened. So I don't know, 3 or 4 months of trying to muscle through this. Oh, just to make life even more fun, my daughter only slept 45 minutes at a time, 24 hours a day.
For how
I know.
long?
Oh, that was probably 6 months,
Oh, honey.
45 minutes at a time, because she wasn't getting the nutrients that her
Right.
body needed. And so she would just wake up and cry. It was horrific, but I was under the impression I could do it all. I was under the impression like I graduated from college when I was 18. I started this business. There is no way motherhood is going to defeat me. I am going to muscle my way through this thing. And you are
Ah.
laughing, and oh, naivety. Like I was
No,
just so
but
naive.
you know what? You're saying naive now, and while I think that is a true perspective, the reality is life showed you, as it does a lot of us, that you can control more things than the average person believes they can. That's why you're successful quicker. You can collapse time, you can perform higher, you can be more efficient. You have something about you that makes you see things others don't see, and that's why you succeed. So why wouldn't we think that about motherhood? Of course
I
we would
don't
think that.
I don't yeah. So I went in with that exact same attitude. And I literally tried to swim upstream for months. I tried to muscle it. I tried to do it all on my own. I just thought, okay, this is what the deal is. And so we're Mormon. We live in Salt Lake. We're Mormon. Not unusual. But a woman who I didn't even know, like I vaguely knew her from church. I like knew her name or nothing. We weren't BFF, nothing, absolutely nothing. She came over to my house a couple times, and I could see her because I was sitting there holding this kid that wouldn't eat, and I could see out my window, and she'd knock and then she'd leave and then she'd knock and leave. Third time she came over, I said, Zach, I don't want to talk to her. I do not want to talk to Christina. I don't want anyone to see me like this. I haven't slept in 2 months. I literally am just in tears. I've got this kid that won't eat. Like at that point, she had a feeding tube in her nose and was in a full body brace because she had
Oh
hip
my god.
dysplasia, which
Oh
is
my
another
gosh.
issue that we were dealing with. And I just said, I can't do anything right now. And she just sat on the porch. She's like, okay, that's fine, but I'm not leaving without talking to Heather. And my husband came back in and he said, Christina's not leaving. I said, what does she want? What does this woman want? I mean, seriously. And like, of course, I'm thinking she's going to ask me for something
Right.
because, I'm like superwoman. Like, why not ask? And anyway, finally, I go to the door and doing up my bra, my nursing bra, and like,
Clipping it back.
yeah, yeah, clip it up. Okay. What do you want, lady? And she said, I just have this feeling that you need some help. And I took the liberty of making this sign up sheet, and all the women in the ward, all the women in the congregation were just pawing over this sheet. And I made for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you are going to have someone like a seasoned mother come for 2 hours so you can sleep. Because everyone had heard that my baby would only sleep for 45 minutes at a time. So 3 days a week, I had these women
Wow.
come in, totally took the initiative. And so what I learned from that is number 1, she knew what I needed before I needed
Hmm.
it because she had been there.
Yeah.
And number 2, I learned I'd always been like the person providing the help. I had always been the superstar. I had never been on the other side of the coin. And I learned to receive because by not receiving, I was denying others the opportunity to serve.
Wow.
And they needed that, and I needed that. And that is a symbiotic relationship that I've had to learn that lesson many, many, many times. But that was the first time that I learned that.
And see, this is the thing about motherhood for high performing women. It's almost a sanctification process that teaches you how to be closer to God. It teaches you how to really walk in the fullness of who you're created to be because you can't muscle through it. And think your daughter, she's how old?
She's 12.
She's 12, right? She's doing great. You survived that time. And it's because you had to learn to be open to receive. And my God,
Absolutely.
can we just talk about the value of new moms having other moms around you? Isn't it? It's just so chaotic from, in your case, all of these physical complications that you had no idea were coming your way. Uh, for me, when our children came out, both of them were kind of like twisted up. So we had to have chiropractor, lactation consultants. My son had a tongue tie, lip tie, cheek tie. So we had to get that corrected. Like all of these things, you don't know what's going to happen. But
Yeah.
having another mom reach out to you and say, like, hey, how you doing? Right? Our midwife, we had had two home births. Our midwife came to us after our first daughter was born 4 days later and said, so did you guys have a breakdown yet?
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yes.
how did you know?
Yeah.
Because even though it's unpredictable, especially being a first-time mom, it's predictably chaotic.
Agreed. And in the past, even 50 years ago or 40 years ago, I'm 42, women had other women supporting them. So, like,
Yes.
my grandma literally drove to my mother's house for weeks every single day to help her with my siblings, to help her with the baby. Where we went off track here, where it used to be a community event. They showed you how to breastfeed. They showed you how to, oh, well, try this, try that. Your sister-in-laws, your sisters, if you couldn't nurse, someone else in the area could help. I don't know where we got this idea that we are, a solo show here. And
Yeah.
millions of years mothers have been helping each other. Why do we think we can do it all? Why are we superwoman all of a sudden? Why why is that even an option? Is
You
my
know,
second thing.
it's a great question. It's a topic I'm so passionate about in general. It's just educating women, even on pregnancy, on childbirthing options. Like, you don't have to do any of the things the way you see it being portrayed in mass media. You
Yeah.
can you have more choice. However, because we are so disconnected, we don't know that we have choices. We don't know, especially as strong women, how to ask another woman to support us when we are literally the most broken and vulnerable
Yeah.
we've ever been because we just grew a life and we became a portal for life. We gave everything that we had. I don't know about you, but my experience of birthing, it was completely magical. The moment that I could feel my daughter coming down the birth canal, I could cry just thinking about how magical it was. And then pushing for me was so hard. I had given everything that I had. I had a 24-hour long labor. It was
Oh
very, very
goodness.
long.
Oh goodness.
And I was exhausted. And this baby had to come out. And I remember that moment of surrender with my midwife, my doula, my midwife's assistant, and my husband there. I remember thinking to myself, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I felt a contraction come on, and everybody was, okay, push. And they'd coach me through it. And it was like God went, oh, and somehow I found the energy to push out this little human. It's those moments and experiences that aren't new. My story isn't a new story, but it's the first time I'd ever heard it because of what you're saying. We're not connecting, we're not sharing not only our birthing stories, but what it's like postpartum, what it's like
Oh,
walking
yeah.
away from a very successful career for 12 years to care for your family. And that's why you're here, Heather.
Get the word out. Well, so I want to go back to something that you said. So you said there was a moment where you just felt inspired and just felt, you know, did you feel like you were going upstream and as soon as you surrendered, everything fell into place?
100%.
That is something that I learned. I don't know if I could have learned it any other way. I don't know if I would have been receptive to that concept or like really grasped it. I mean, you're like, oh, yeah, I get that. I get that. But until you are in that situation and you have that like come to Jesus moment, like, this kid's got to come out. He's going to be cut out or it's going to go out. The birth kid. There are only two choices.
Mhm.
This kid isn't going to stay in here forever. It gives you it just changes your paradigm. The only way I can describe it is going upstream to going downstream and just letting those things fall into place. Because, like you said, people have done this before. People have made it through these things. There is a natural process. There is a way to do these things. There is a harmonious energy to hit. But if you're going against it, actively going against that, it's going to be a tough, you know,
Yeah.
upstream battle.
You can't white knuckle your way upstream. You can't force it no matter how hard you kick. There is something about surrender to the way things need to be, and not even from just a spiritual perspective or a conceptual perspective, but in life, there's a way that things work.
Yeah.
And I think motherhood is a perfect example of it because 7
Yeah.
billion people on the planet, listen, people will survive. The one thing we gonna do, we gonna survive.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Mhm.
Sometimes you gotta let go of, well, I'm gonna do it this way and I'm gonna do that way, and this is how it's gonna be. And when you let go of that, it's I think what we're discovering here, which is certainly true for me, is the ability to surrender and allow things to go in the way that they should. For me, I say it's God's plan. God has a divine way that he knows is best. When we're able to surrender to that and know, hey, we're good. You can graduate at 18, you can do all these things, you can build a multi-million dollar business, you can do all these things, and you're still not as good as God.
Well, yeah, agree.
Right?
Totally. Yes, yes, yes,
And
yes,
that
yes.
that sort of moment, that unfolding in that moment, I think is an opportunity for motherhood to really change us as entrepreneurs.
And changes for the better. I would have never thought that being a mother would make me a better businesswoman,
Preach,
but
please
it
talk about it.
has. It's so different. It's so different. And so I have two daughters. I have a 12-year-old and I have a 5-year-old. And it is it's made me a better leader. It's made me a better, more have more emotional fluency where I don't have to be, that hard ass all the time. I can be vulnerable. I can be authentic. I don't have, gosh, man, I am stumbling over my thoughts and words here. It's Motherhood has made me a better businesswoman. It's made me, number one, more patient, way more patient. I remember thinking we had one employee and I'm like, why can't he just do the work that I have given him in the amount of time that I have set forth? And then this is a true story. Like, this is full on true story. The other day, my daughter, my 5-year-old got ready for church, put on a dress, put on the shoes, go there. On the way home, I realized she doesn't have underwear on. And I said, did you not have underwear the whole time? And she said, and I quote, "You never told me to put it on." I said, "That's number one."
Oh, wait,
Okay.
stop. It broke up. You got to go back and say, she told me, and I quote, say that again.
So she told me, and I quote, "You never told me to put it on." So that's number one. You wake up in the morning and you put on underwear. First thing, first thing. Let's just make a general statement from now on. The underwear is always, worn. And so I had that experience 20 years after I was working with this employee. And now I realize, you know what? Perhaps I should have started with the basics with this guy. Let's be a little bit more patient. Let's be a little bit more loving. Let's be a little bit more understanding. Motherhood's also helped me be more vulnerable. In Salt Lake, I'm a unicorn. So I'm female, founder, and Mormon. So I've got, like three strikes against me pretty much. Like I when I go into a room, it's 75 men and me. And I've always cultivated that more, I don't want to use the word aggressive, but more masculine energy. And after being a stay-at-home mom for 12 years, that vulnerability and that feminine energy actually serves me better.
Yeah.
And I wish I could go back into some of those rooms where I thought I was commanding the troops and I thought, this is what the deal is and this is what I wish I could have learned that lesson earlier in life. I would have been a much better leader and a much better boss, but you
Let's
know,
talk about it. Let's talk about it where you are now and where it's taking you. I agree. Motherhood broke me of my tendency to force things into being, and not in a unethical or ill-mannered way, but because I could, I did. And that's how I achieved so quickly and so much. When you become a mom and so much is out of your control, you learn surrender, you learn patience. I agree with all of that. So here you are having 5 businesses, making multi-million dollars with these businesses. You take 12 years out to be a mom, you learn all of these lessons. And what now, Heather?
so taking over the world again. So I learned a very distinct lesson that if I don't put my first things first, they're just not going to get done, which I wish I had. Oh, I do. I have my phone by me. I don't know if you guys can see this. I'll send you a picture. But these are my top 5 things. Okay. So these are my rocks. And what I have learned is, the old analogy, you put the big rocks in first, and then you put the smaller rocks, and then the pebbles and the grain. And then, eventually you'll be able to fit all the stuff in. But if you don't put the big rocks in first, it's not going to happen.
Mm.
So right now I have a second career because I'm not going to go back to my businesses that are humming. They're all doing well, they're doing great. Checks coming on the first. If they're not there on the second, I'm down at the office like, hey, where's my money? You know?
Still a
So
boss.
yeah,
Don't check me. I'm still a
I'm
boss.
gonna need those checks and I'm gonna need them immediately. So those businesses are all going well. I put people in positions to succeed, and they have far surpassed anything I could have done. I would literally just mess the thing up at this point. So that's going well. I have this insatiable urge. I mean, just like I have a fire lit underneath me to download what's up here into the next generation, share this information. I feel like I'm Hamilton. Like, why do you write like you're running out of time? I mean, that's literally my life. I'm writing a book. I give keynote speeches all over the place. I do, podcasts constantly. I just feel that urgency to help download this information so people don't have to make 20 years making the mistakes that I did.
Yeah.
That they can be successful earlier and understand these lessons earlier. And one of the big things that I center all of my talks, center all, the topic that I work on is your 5 rocks first. So my 5 are, I'll show you, my family, my religion, because Mormonism is not a passive religion. I mean, it is like a full-time job being Mormon. So working out, eating well, and then this middle one is my 500 keynotes. So I want to give 500 keynotes in my lifetime. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if I'm going to do it. I'm a number 18 right now, but that's what I want to go for. Those are my 5 things. So if those are truly the most important things to me, family being number 1, religion being number 2, physical body number 3, eating and keynotes in that exact order. When my youngest went to kindergarten, my husband and I sat down and said, okay, well, now I've got all this time and I want to do this and I want to do that. And he brought up, well, why don't we get a nanny from 3 to 7 just to run the kids around, get dinner going, get the kids going to bed, that type of thing. And we kind of fleshed out that idea a little bit. And we both came to the realization, if family is our number 1 priority, then I need to be available for those kids.
Mm.
So I am running the carpool. I am, going to cheerleading. I am watching my little one at cheerleading. I'm week to week. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're doing your handstand now. Oh, we're so excited. And actually following up and being interested and being engaged in these kids' lives. And I'm voting with my time.
That's
I
amazing.
I could be out giving speeches all day, every day. That's very doable because, like I said, I'm a unicorn in Salt Lake. Like I'm a unicorn in Utah. I get a lot of requests to speak at evening events, and I just have to say, no, that's not going, to work for our family. But what I get in return, I swear, those kids, like they sit at the dinner table. How was school? Fine. How's Susie? Fine. Just nothing. But in the car, it's like I give them truth serum or something. I mean, it's just pours out of these girls. And I hear about this and that and, all the minutia of their lives, but that's important to them. So it needs to be important to me. And
Yeah.
so I become part of that narrative. I become, involved in the friends. I become, the decision making, the fleshing those ideas out. And I'm literally voting with my time. I am
You
saying,
get
okay,
to
that's my number
stay
1 thing.
you get to stay involved in the thing that's most important to you because you have made that the priority. And it's clear to you, it's clear to your husband,
Yep,
and it's clear to your kids that they are the priority. I love that. One of
absolutely.
one
And my
of
little
the
one, so sorry, let me interrupt you for 1 second. So like my little one says, so and so is going to Disney World. So and so is going on a Disney cruise. And my answer to that is, I'm driving you around at 3 in the afternoon. So that's your fun. We're not going on a Disney cruise because your mom is spending half the day driving you around.
I am the Disney cruise. Let's
Yeah.
put on Spotify.
Yeah. Literally. Yeah. But, we're voting with our time. If that's what's the most important, then, we're not taking $40,000 cruises. It doesn't exist in our
Yeah.
lives.
One of my mantras when I started my business was given to me by a mentor. At the time, I did not recognize how vitally important it would be to anchor myself to this statement. But the motto is this: I will build my business around my life. I will not build my life
Oh,
around my business. And it didn't become important to me when I was single, living in LA, living my best life, right? With my brand new luxury car and my beautifully decorated apartment. And I had all this time and I could do whatever I wanted. I stayed up late. I went to fancy dinners. I went to the beach, traveled. It did not occur to me that my business had become my life until I got married.
yeah.
And then when we had kids, that time in my life was really chaotic. I talk about this in some of the other episodes, but essentially, I got married, sold everything to travel the world with my husband, Within weeks, I found out my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer and had 3 months, 12 months to live. And then we got married very quickly. And then I got pregnant and my dad died and we were homeless in essence, and then moved across the country to be closer to family to have a baby. And that was literally 2.5 years ago for me.
Oh my gosh. So
Right.
post-COVID. Wow.
Yeah. It was 2021 is when everything
Oh,
really broke down. And the thing about the thing about it is my business only survived because of that mantra that my business has to support my life. My life cannot support my business. So I did lose clients when I was in Kansas, where I'm from. We didn't travel the world, obviously. We went to Croatia for like 2 months. We went to Mexico City. We went to a couple of places and then we came back. And I did have to tell a client, look, you're not my priority. I'm so sorry. It took
yeah,
me 2 days to respond to you, but I'm in Kansas with my dad, taking him to chemo. And that person wasn't very gracious about it, and I was okay with it. It in the moment, it hurt,
yeah,
but at the end of the day, my big rock was my family as well. And the thing about being an entrepreneur, I think you'll agree with this, is you find a way to survive through it if that's what you're meant to do. Your business should support you. And if it doesn't support you, the great thing about being skilled as an entrepreneur is you will find a way to change that business. It will have
absolutely.
to change. And if it doesn't,
That's
bye.
okay. No,
Right.
that's the other thing is it's okay. If it doesn't fit your lifestyle anymore, move on.
Mm.
Do something else. You now have all these tools, all these newly learned skills. I think people are afraid of making, the wrong mistakes so many times. They're like, well, I put this much time and effort into doing this, might as well keep going. Interesting thing that you just said about the client that you parted ways with. My business has changed in that like attracts like. So I am getting speaking engagements from 9 a.m. to 3 in the afternoon. Okay. Do you know who can come at 9 a.m. to 3 in the afternoon? You
Old
got like,
people.
and young people. That's who you have. That's literally who you have. So I am able to hit these target audiences. So downloading this information here and working with students, I absolutely love working. We have tons of colleges around here, the University of Utah, BYU, Utah Valley University, Utah State. I mean, we have so many colleges just right here. And I'm working with so many students because that's who's available at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday. And so it kind of just, again, that
It
upstream,
works.
downstream
Yeah.
thing. If
Yep.
I want to download what's in my head, the person who wants to listen to that information is probably not the 35-year-old tech bro, who's like on his fourth startup.
Yeah.
That's not my audience. That's
Right.
not who I want. On the flip side, so funny. I have been like fine tuning my skills with old people because one of the things I wanted to do with my speaking is to travel the world. And I am like, the AARP crowd is like my biggest fan.
Oh, of
Like they
course they
love
are.
me. Oh yeah, totally
I'm
love me.
sure. I mean, I love you. I could imagine if I was
Oh
older,
yeah.
if I was
Oh
elderly
yeah.
and heard your
Oh yeah.
story, I'd be like, "Go, sister, go."
They love it. And so recently I just got a speaking gig with Viking Cruises. So I'm going to go all around the
Wow.
Mediterranean. Yeah. And giving lectures on business and that type of stuff. And so, yeah,
Yes, Heather.
that
Yes.
was
I love
what I
this.
wanted to do.
Such a great testament to the whole conversation we're having around setting really boundaries for yourself based upon what you know is valuable for you. And instead of fighting upstream, surrendering to the way that it's going and knowing that it's going to find a way to work in your favor.
Mhm. Yeah, like
Incredible.
attracts like. It's whoever needs you and whatever you need will eventually, if you just let it go,
Do the
it's
work, right? make sure like this is coming from the marketing queen over here. We can't leave those pieces out.
No,
And
create your own luck. Create your own life. Design your life. Design your destiny. What do you want this to look like? Okay, now how do we make that happen? Yeah, you got to
let
put the
it
vibe out
go.
there.
Let
You
it
got it.
go.
You got it. Easier said than done though.
Oh
From like a
yeah.
total type A, like
Oh
easier
yeah.
said than done.
Girl, you, me, and our listeners, we get it. Uh so I would love to know, who would you like to hear from? If our audience members are listening and they're like, "Man, I really
Hmm.
wanna reach out to this Heather woman," who would be the perfect person to reach out for these amazing downloads that you have to offer?
So my ideal person is someone who can get me in front of a crowd, someone who can connect me to a crowd that wants to hear my message. So whether that's your five rocks, prioritizing, or my wild ride of entrepreneurship, or just like a theme of this podcast, I'm now going to name this podcast, upstream to downstream. You know, those are the type of people that I want to connect with. I find myself I feed, when something's right for you, when you feed off of the energy in the room. And what I feed off of is a large group and speaking to them and just that exchange of energy, that exchange of ideas, that exchange of mindset. I do okay like on a podcast, but man alive, do I ever like
Oh, I
I
think you
love it.
do really good on a podcast. Let us be the judge. T so
Okay.
so tell me this, how if someone wants to reach out to you and they wanna book you for a speaking engagement, how would they find you?
So my LinkedIn's the easiest way to get a hold of me, and I'll give that to you for the show notes. And yeah, just DM me through there. Just slide on in. And I got a lot to say. I'm writing a book right now, so I post pretty much every day and just downloading what's up here. So it's all there.
Incredible. Wow, thank you for sharing, all of your journey, and the last question I need to ask you is, look, you've had this big life. You've been a part of building multi-million dollar businesses. You were able to be a stay-at-home mom for 12 years while you collected your checks every first of the month. You learned the power of surrender, and that made you a better
Mhm.
business person. And now, as you're going to this next venture of your life, which we know you're going to do well, my question for you is, how do you do it?
Number one, accepting a lot of help, like a lot. I I cannot do this alone, and nor would I want to do this alone. So, even things like housekeepers and that type of thing.
Yes.
Yes, it's extremely helpful, but oh, if I could turn my camera around right now, it looks like a bomb went off in my house. There's ramen noodle right here on my
For
dining room
for
table.
people that don't have the visual, I just want to confirm her house looks absolutely beautiful, and we're talking about a small pile of things out of place
Well,
behind her.
it's a ramen noodles and a keyboard and wrapping paper. And you know what? That's probably been there for 2 weeks and it's probably going to be there for another 2 weeks. And you just have to be okay with that. Set your expectations very low. If I think I'm going to have this amazing, picture perfect Instagram every single day, if I think my kid's going to wear underwear to church, like, you know, lower that bar, just lower that thing right away. And just don't expect too much. And then to be pleasantly surprised when it actually works out. But notice on my top five things, there's nothing about a clean house in my top
Mm,
five things. So, I got ramen noodle on the dining room table and I'm okay with that.
amazing. That's a really good piece of advice. Heather, I just want to check before we close out. Is there anything that we didn't cover today that you want to make sure we talk about?
Let's see. So, do you feel like I made a cohesive point? So, like my book is on the 5 rocks, which I hit. Do you think that I
Now I'm
made
going
a
to give you
cohesive
a
point with
platform for
that?
this. Okay. So
Okay.
I do a thing, most podcasts. I'm going to do it here. So
Okay.
I'm going to cue you up. Okay. So I find often high performing women who achieve a lot, we don't always toot our own horns and we don't always get a chance to give our acceptance speech without guilt, without shame, and to unapologetically name the things we've done. So on this podcast, I want to give you and other women that opportunity to do just that. So if you would like, I will invite you to the stage and I would ask you to list off everything that you have done. I don't want a disclaimer. I will stop you and we'll do it again. No disclaimer and no shame. List everything that you have done and list what you
My.
are working on. Madame, the stage is yours. Yours.
Oh my. Okay. So that's wow. So my proudest accomplishment is snagging the man of my dreams. I've been married for 17 years. So we're doing something right. He's just amazing. And my 2 kids, of course, my 2 little daughters, little 12 and 5. So those are my biggest accomplishments. Right now, I'm working on a book and it's going to be amazing. I'm not going to lie to you. And it's called That's a Wrap, and it's a picture of me in a queen costume on the cover. And the subtitle is How I Became the Queen of an Industry. And it's going to be just what we had talked about, how I was a type A, high achieving, woman, businesswoman, and how I did it, and all of the things that I did wrong. So everyone can learn from the mistakes that I made and a couple things that I did right. And so you can replicate those in your own lives. I am just so passionate about sharing this information and getting the word out, how to design these lives that you want.
Yeah, beautiful. And give us just a word about what you have accomplished in business from that same stage. I want you to say it unapologetically without disclaimer.
Okay, so like you want specific, like I'm not going to share numbers, but
It's
I
up to
have 5
you.
come.
It's
Well, I
up to
mean,
you. I don't, but
it's
this is the interesting, but here's the interesting point. Here's the interesting point. I have had guests on my show who make an extraordinary amount of money and don't ever want to talk about it. I've had guests on my show win huge awards and only be comfortable talking about the most recent one. And for me,
yeah,
the challenge with that is if you're not going to say it on a platform that is made for women by
that's
women to
true.
talk about success, then when in life do you ever get to say it?
That's true. Okay, so
Is
what would I
why.
even
So
say?
here's what I say. Here's what I'm going to say to you. You have the stage. You're accepting the award for what you have accomplished in business, and you've already accepted it for what you've accomplished in life. You just told us, right? This is your Barbie movie moment where you got to just say, you won the award for being an incredible entrepreneur because you've accomplished 1 through 5. And you get to say, yes, I did accomplish 1 through 5. Thank you.
So I guess we talked about like graduated from college when I was 18, started my master's when I was 19. You know what? I feel I don't know why I've never like talked about this before on a podcast, but I feel inspired to say this, which I don't talk about openly ever, is that I'm actually a domestic abuse survivor from my first husband, and I got married when I was 18 and divorced when I was 21. And I was under the impression that he eventually died of a heroin overdose. And when I was 21, I was so beaten down and just at like my lowest point. Just, oh my goodness, talk about like the scarlet letter. I'm Mormon, I'm 21 and I'm divorced. I mean, ultimate, black mark on you.
Yeah.
And I learned the value of hope in post traumatic growth, in that I had a glimmer of what my life could be. I just spent all of these years accomplishing all of these things, and one man made me feel like I was worth nothing. And every day, like I used to lock myself in my room at night and be shocked that I was awake the next morning. Like, oh my gosh, I'm alive. Wow. This is
Wow.
unbelievable. And I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't tell my family, nothing. I just separated myself from them. I would
Mm.
fold his laundry wrong and he would go punch out car windows. I mean,
Wow.
just rage, just anger. And it was traumatic. It was very, very traumatic. And I had always considered myself to have high self worth. But I think my proudest achievement would be number one, leaving that relationship, realizing that there's no possible way I could have kids with that man. Even though he fit the exact profile, he was Mormon from a nice family, went to a good school, football player, all this stuff. It didn't, on paper, it looked really good, but it wasn't. And I had enough courage and enough confidence in myself to, number one, leave that relationship, and not only leave it, to just blossom and flourish in that post traumatic growth phase. So I was 21 when I did that, and I was 23 when I opened my business.
Wow.
So very tight timeline, but I just had an inkling of hope, and I was able to hold on to that and grow from that experience. And I've learned that lesson time after time after time after time, again with my daughter when I was 30, and again, at 42, when I'm looking at my life, like, what am I going to do now? I've been a mom for 12 years. Like, what do I have to offer? What could I possibly offer anyone around me? But it's that little inkling of hope, that little spark that, okay, I can do this. And not only can I do this, I'm going to kick ass doing this.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that very vulnerable and quite frankly shocking experience. I don't think a lot of people would have listened to this show or Googled you and known that you came from such a living hell.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Wow.
rough. And I was so young. Oh, I was so young. Oh,
Thank
man.
thank you so much for sharing. And you took the stage in an incredibly vulnerable way, and that's not what I had anticipated, but I love what you shared so much. So I accept that is your greatest accomplishment. I
Yeah.
think anybody listening would agree with you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for everything. I mean, truly, it's been a pleasure, and I really hope that your story can continue to inspire women just like you to keep going, to avoid the pitfalls, to learn boundaries, to know when to say no, and to know when to swim upstream and when to let the current take you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you for having me.